Welcome back, everyone, to another Explainer. And let me tell you, I am absolutely thrilled you're here today, because we're looking at a piece of history that genuinely defies belief. Seriously, it's wild. We are going to unpack the incredible, fully documented story of the time the Central Intelligence Agency, literally one of the most powerful and well-funded intelligence organizations on the entire planet, spent millions of dollars trying to prove that people could spy on enemies using nothing but the power of their minds. I know, it sounds completely impossible. But I assure you, every single bit of the source material we're covering today is a matter of public record.
So what if I told you the CIA once hired psychics? Right? If you heard that at a dinner party, you'd probably just laugh it off as the plot of some ridiculous science fiction movie. But the most fascinating thing about history is that it's often way stranger than fiction. This isn't a myth, and it's definitely not a rumor. It's a highly documented piece of Cold War history that involves top-secret clearances, massive budgets, and a decades-long quest to harness the unexplained powers of the human brain.
Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1. The Psychic Arms Race.
Picture this. It's 1972, and the Cold War is at its absolute peak. The United States and the Soviet Union are locked in this incredibly tense, high-stakes standoff, and both nations are desperately looking for absolutely any advantage they can find over the other. Now, this arms race wasn't just about the tangible things, building bigger weapons, faster jets, or more devastating nuclear arsenals. There was actually an intangible arms race happening right in the shadows. American intelligence started receiving some deeply concerning reports. These reports suggested that the Soviet Union was pouring immense resources into psychic research. The rumors claimed that Soviet scientists were actively training individuals to read top-secret documents, locate hidden military bases, and gather crucial intelligence, all without ever leaving a room.
Now, whether those reports coming out of the Soviet Union were totally accurate or just wildly exaggerated, honestly, it didn't even matter at the time. The CIA simply couldn't risk ignoring them. And that tells you everything you need to know about the intense paranoia of the era. The stakes were just too high. If the Soviets were even a fraction of a percent close to succeeding in creating a psychic spy program, America simply could not afford to be left behind. This immense pressure led the CIA to make an incredibly surprising decision. They decided to launch a psychic research program of their very own.
Moving right along to Section 2, inside Project Stargate.
So the crucial point here is how they approached this. This became the highly classified umbrella for their paranormal investigations. But they didn't use mystical terms or, crystal balls. Instead, they anchored the abstract idea of psychic powers into a highly clinical, bureaucratic term. They called it remote viewing, which they defined as the ability to accurately describe a distant place without physically being there. By giving it this scientific-sounding name, the CIA effectively transformed a fringe concept into a structured intelligence-gathering technique, something they could actively and rigorously test in a laboratory setting.
You might be wondering how they actually tested this. Well, the mechanics of these experiments were surprisingly straightforward. Step 1. The participant, or the remote viewer, was placed in a completely quiet, isolated room. Step 2. They were given absolutely no context other than a set of geographic coordinates, or sometimes literally just a random string of numbers. Step 3. The participant would close their eyes and simply describe whatever images, feelings, or structures popped into their minds. They described buildings, landscapes, people, military bases, the whole shebang. Everything they said or sketched was meticulously written down by researchers and later compared to the real-world locations. I know it sounds like a parlor trick, but they treated it with the absolute utmost scientific seriousness.
Which brings us to Section 3, the bizarre results.
So how did these impossible-sounding tests actually play out over the years? Well, during the course of Project Stargate, a few individuals really stood out, and perhaps none more so than a guy named Joseph McMoneagle. He was actually a former police officer who became one of the most famous and heavily tested remote viewers for the entire project. Supporters of the program claim that McMoneagle, and a few others like him, produced some astonishing results. The reports stated that they correctly described secret Soviet facilities, and in some cases even accurately detailed the highly specific layout of hidden military installations halfway across the world, armed with nothing but coordinates.
But here's the catch, and it brilliantly illustrates the massive scientific roadblock the CIA ran into. The results were incredibly messy. On one hand, you had these inconsistent successes where the remote viewers provided remarkably close, highly specific descriptions of targets they shouldn't have known anything about. But on the flip side, there were glaring failures where their descriptions were just completely wrong. Scientists reviewing all this data struggled for years to figure out a core problem. Were these occasional correct guesses evidence of genuine psychic hits, or were they just statistical coincidences?
All right, Section 4, the declassified truth.
For a long time, the public had absolutely zero idea this internal debate was even happening. But that all changed in the 1990s when the heavy black ink of government censorship was finally lifted and thousands of documents relating to Project Stargate were released for the world to see. And one of the most shocking revelations from those documents is the number 20. Because Project Stargate wasn't just some fleeting weekend experiment. The CIA kept this program running for over 20 years. Just try to wrap your head around the sheer bureaucratic commitment required to sustain funding and resources for a fringe idea like remote viewing across multiple decades and entirely different presidential administrations.
And as you can probably guess, keeping a program running for 2 decades requires some serious capital. As the newly declassified document showed, the CIA had poured millions of dollars into this psychic research program. We're talking a massive financial investment here, which really proves that top-level intelligence officials took the threat and the potential of psychic warfare incredibly seriously.
But, all things must come to an end. In the mid-1990s, the CIA commissioned the American Institutes for Research to do a comprehensive, totally independent evaluation of Project Stargate's 2 decades of data. After thoroughly reviewing the evidence, they made the final call. They determined there simply wasn't sufficient proof that remote viewing was reliable enough to be used for actionable intelligence work. Because the results just couldn't be consistently replicated, the program was officially shut down soon afterward.
Which leads us to our final part, Section 5, Unsolved Mysteries and Conspiracies. Now, what's really interesting about this is that in the world of government secrets, an official shutdown is rarely the actual end of the conversation. Declassification sparked a fierce, ongoing debate that continues today. On one side, you have believers who theorize the CIA simply moved the research underground, continuing it under different names. They argue the government actually did find proof that remote viewing worked, but purposely kept those successful results highly classified. These supporters point directly to specific, astonishingly accurate sessions found in the released files. But on the other side, skeptics argue that pointing to a few correct guesses relies heavily on selective memory, or what's called the Texas sharpshooter fallacy, basically drawing a bullseye around your hits while conveniently ignoring the thousands of glaring misses.
But as an explainer of the source material, it's absolutely vital we ground ourselves in the objective truth of what we actually know. And here it is. The declassified documents absolutely confirm that the program existed. The millions spent, the remote viewers sitting in quiet rooms, the 20 solid years of research, that is all undeniable historical fact. However, the publicly available evidence does not confirm the existence of extraordinary psychic abilities. Which naturally leaves us with a few pretty massive lingering questions connecting right back to the very heart of this incredible story. Why did one of the world's most powerful, data-driven intelligence agencies invest so heavily in this? Was it born purely out of genuine scientific curiosity? Was it just a symptom of rampant Cold War paranoia where they were terrified of falling behind the Soviets? Or did they see something in those quiet rooms that defied explanation? This is the true mystery of Project Stargate. And I want to leave you with this final, really provocative thought. Why did the CIA keep it running for 20 years? Did the government simply waste millions of dollars chasing pseudoscience? Or does the human mind actually hold capabilities that science just hasn't fully explained yet? I'd absolutely love to hear your thoughts on this. Let me know in the comments. And be sure to subscribe for more explainers where we break down history's most unbelievable true stories directly from the source. Thanks so much for learning with me today, and I'll see you in the next one.